Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the eCommerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Marc Vasquez to the podcast. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
It is awesome to have you along for the ride. We've been talking about doing this for a while now, and we finally, when we caught up in Scottsdale a few weeks back, or I guess it's almost a month ago now already, we finally were able to catch up, and it was like, man, I got to get you on the podcast. And you said, yeah, once I'm back and I'm settled back in at home, let's tee this up, let's get it scheduled. So I pinged you on the old LinkedIn and said, look,
Yeah.
dude, please just book this in. And ideally, let's get this booked in by the end of the year, because I'd like to get our episode out by the end of the year while Scottsdale and everything is still like fresh in our mind. And we both pulled finger and we made it happen. So I'm super stoked to
We
have you
did.
along for the ride today.
Same. I'm super excited, man. This is great. I love listening to the podcast. Very happy to be a part of it.
Awesome. Listen, let's maybe talk a little bit about, I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about Scottsdale, but what I think Scottsdale proved for those that weren't along and weren't aware of it happening. B2B e-commerce world Americas, the very, very first event, and the gala and awards dinner that was held at the end of the event over a couple of days. It was pretty spectacular for a first of its kind event in the United States, being put on by the B2B e-commerce association. Justin, Brett, and the whole B2B team did a fantastic job putting this on. Like, my takeaway from this was there is a ridiculous hunger out there for people working in the industry to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, and that they feel like, okay, maybe the retail world gets their awards and their accolades and they get to stand up on stage and they get to be told, okay, you won the best marketing campaign or the best social campaign or whatever it is. But when do we get something that's uniquely for us and our industry, that's dedicated to elevating and putting people up on the pedestal that have oftentimes been toiling away in their roles for years with very little recognition? They've never been put up on a pedestal before. And that's the feeling I came away from the event with. What was your take?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you spoke about it on stage. I think Justin spoke about it. Everyone really touched on the fact that those of us actually in the trenches in B2B e-commerce are isolated. We don't really have that same size community like an NRF or a retail where you can go and you take over the Javits Center because it's this massive million people experience type thing. You're chugging along, and most corporations, it's what Office Space, they move Milton to the basement. You're like, okay, the e-commerce guy's over here, don't bother him, he's fine. Meanwhile, sales, operation, everybody's really chugging along because you can see it. It's very contextual and it's very in your face that they're doing things that are concrete and not as ethereal as e-commerce feels some days. So the award show was absolutely awesome. I thought it was great that they recognized everyone, that they put together such a awesome panel of people that spoke at the different things throughout the event. I would say anyone who didn't go, talk about major FOMO. That was like, I'm so glad I was able to make it. I think it was just a fantastic event all around.
Yeah, and it was cool also because I noticed that a lot of partners, like husbands and wives of the people that were
Mhm.
attending and working in the industry, I think I saw more partners at this event and was introduced to more partners that at any other event or any other conference or anything that was industry related. People felt like they could bring their partners along. They added days on the end because it was beautiful. The weather's beautiful.
Yeah,
Where most people came from, it's dead of winter.
yeah, exactly.
Scottsdale had perfect weather. We were in the spa at the end of the day, in the swimming pool, and so it felt very. I don't know. It just felt super inclusive as well.
Yeah, it's like asking your spouse, "Hey, do you want to go to Boston in the middle of the snow season?" No.
Yeah.
Arizona was an absolute win for that. And yeah, it was great. I think we saw everybody in the lobby when we were checking in. Everybody and their spouse was there. I ran into you, and it was just funny. It was a neat little reconnection before the event even started.
It was. And how about those Waymos? It was my first time ever riding
Same.
in a Waymo, and
Yep.
I tell you, I'm a convert. I rode a Waymo, I think 5 or 6 times. And the final time was on the way to the airport, and I'm like, man, I can see why Uber's doing deals with Waymo in certain regions, because I tell you, once Waymo goes mainstream, and especially if it continues to trounce Tesla like it has been in terms of full self drive, I could see this absolutely kicking Uber's behind very quickly.
Yeah, my first time as well. I thought it was just a surreal experience. It's funny. So my wife's aunt actually lives out there in the Phoenix area, and she says that everyone out there hates the Waymos because they go the speed limit.
Yes, exactly. That is one thing that's true. That is one
So,
thing that's true.
yep.
They're very law-abiding drivers.
Yeah, so all the natives, they just can't stand it because it's just clogging up their roads because they're going 10, 15 miles over. I do think that it is the future. I mean, I think being in the unique space we are in e-commerce and B2B and AI, we're privy to seeing a lot of this stuff first and seeing Waymo in action. I think a lot of people are going to look at it and go, I don't know so much about this. Meanwhile, we're all jumping in the cars like, heck yes, let's go. I would love to see it come to the East Coast. I don't know if it'll actually survive in
Yeah.
Philly. We have a little bit of a reputation. We've thrown batteries at Santa. We killed Popebot, which was hitchhiking. I don't know if Jaguar I-types are going to make it, but I'd love to see them. I think it would be a phenomenal win for everyone. It was a neat technological merge, though.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you. Obviously, if human drivers can figure out driving in nasty weather, and the reality is, I think the stats speak for themselves, which is that these digital drivers, these AI drivers, are safer on balance than human drivers.
Yep.
But there's
Yep.
still going to be accidents. There's still people that are going to die. There's still going to people if and when they come to snow laden roads, they're going to have to go back to home base and get some chains
Yeah.
digitally put on with maybe the Optimus robot. But the reality is that I think you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I feel like
No.
there's some parallels between Waymo and B2B e-commerce. I don't think you can put that genie back in the bottle. The people that have been exposed to buying and selling via B2B e-commerce, the people that have been used to buying via EDI or punch out or an e-procurement system with heavy automation that brings their cost of procurement down as a result, the people that are used to selling via these digital channels and being able to tender for example, a government contract where without automation, they won't even let you tender for the contract. There are certain
Yep.
sales channels in B2B that manufacturers and distributors can't even tap into unless they've got digital capabilities. And the days of every single sale being mediated by a sales rep are long gone. And I don't think we can put that genie back in the bottle. And I think we had that reinforced loud and clear in Scottsdale, and then in
Oh, yeah.
Atlanta last week at B2B Online Atlanta, it was reinforced further that look, there is the buying demographic is changing super rapidly, but the selling demographic isn't quite evolving quite as rapidly. And so we've got this
Yep.
younger, more diverse buying generation than ever before. Over 70% are millennials and Gen Zs. And so they have an expectation of default self-serviceability. And I think that the selling cohort is still going, well, we sell really complex products with really complex specifications, and we have a consultative selling process and all that sort of stuff. And that's all fine and good. But there is oftentimes scenarios, even in that environment, where there are rebuys happening, repurchases happening of known products with known specs, known capabilities, and I'm speccing this into a build scenario, or I'm creating a product, or I am buying products as an OEM to manufacture something. It feels like there is just no going back from this, and the companies that drag their feet the longest are going to miss out on being
Yep.
they totally miss out on first mover advantage. What is your take?
Sure. Absolutely. I think we're well past whatever that peak as innovation and things catch up. There's a there's not an advantage oftentimes in industrial manufacturing to be first. Sometimes there is, but oftentimes those people figure out how to do it wrong and then fix it and figure it out better and it gets better. And the parallel I draw there is Delta, I think it was the one that used the AI chatbots and it started giving bad
Yes.
information. And they were bound by it. They had to give those tickets or give that information. And so it's one of those, if you're too early an adopter, there's some risk. And some industries and businesses can take that. And then there's other ones that are going to be in the middle. But I think by and large, a lot of B2B places are going to be left behind. I think we're going to see a total transformation of the B2B landscape of those who get it and implement it and actually do something with it, and those who are just wait and see and then it's too late. I feel that's what's happening. We're seeing a lot of consolidation in the space. We're seeing a lot of platforms consolidate. We just saw Adobe buy SEMrush, which I have no idea what that play is going to
Yes.
bring.
For billions.
Talk about a really interesting like pivot for a platform, a service like that. Now they have all this data. And that's probably what they really bought was all that data available to them that they can feed to AI and to other systems. They're not necessarily looking for the tool
Yes.
itself, but if they want to compete with Shopify and others, that's a way to absolutely do it. I'm excited for this because I think the future is absolutely limitless. I think there is so much that we haven't even seen yet that's coming out through agentic, through getting to that parallel between humans and robots peacefully coexisting. It's not just going to be the Waymos driving us everywhere, but then the robots in restaurants bringing the drinks and the food and the every other area of our life that you can start to see that happening in, to the point where eventually there will be cyborgs walking down the street. Maybe a little further off. We're getting
Yeah, we're
close.
not far away from Skynet potentially taking over. So I tell you, I still say please and thank you when I'm in ChatGPT. At least, hopefully, ChatGPT will remember me when the robot overlords take over. It will remember that I was very respectful to my chat agents.
The good news is a misplaced comma can still take down AWS or Cloudflare. So I think we're safe from Skynet, because human error will eventually creep in and we'll be able to just, oops, it's offline
Yeah,
again.
yeah, it's interesting you say that because the more that I play with AI, and I've been pretty hardcore and deep into the AI space, particularly for B2B, but just generally speaking, for a year and a half now. And I've been redirecting all my web queries to ChatGPT now for over a year. And I'm using Lovable and I'm building apps and I'm trying to just
Mhm.
get my finger in the AI pie however and wherever I can, and comparing ChatGPT with Grok and Gemini. And man, I tell you, the latest version of Gemini is pretty damn impressive. And so I'm like, I'm trying to keep up with this, but it feels like trying to drink out of a fire hose. And it's
Yep.
from my clients at least, and I'm sure it feels a little bit like this to you, the people that I work with and your bosses and your leadership in your business, they want to know, okay, that's great. That's the pie in the sky stuff. But what can we apply today, literally practically apply today, that isn't going to break the bank, is going to help us be more efficient, is going to help create a better customer experience? And I think that was the beauty of something like what Nick Pericles did, where he literally live in front of the audience gave some examples of how
Yep.
ChatGPT in particular, and he showed some stuff from Claude and he showed some stuff from Perplexity, but particularly with ChatGPT, just the $20 a month paid version, how distribution businesses can actually leverage that today for very specific,
Mhm.
very concrete use cases in their business. And so I'm guessing, are you feeling that pressure from the top down in your business too? And for those that, for those that don't know, you are the global technical director of e-commerce for Ideal Clamp Products. And so are you feeling that kind of almost top down pressure to go, hey, what are we doing about this AI thing? It feels big.
Yeah, for sure. We are a 100% growth focused company. Like, we are all in on growth, and it's not going to come the traditional ways. It's not going to come through just doing more of what we've done for the last 100 years. Ideal Tridon's a 100-year-old
Yep.
company. That's a pretty big accomplishment. And we've got 18 manufacturing locations. We're not small anymore. And so how do we continue to scale that? And AI is the answer. We're plugging it in on my team, from code development, code review, chatbots on the site, cross-reference tools. That's where we're finding the easy wins that you can take back up the ladder and say, okay, what are some ethereal ideas, or what are some really like pie in the sky, you wish we could do this, but it costs too much or it needs too many people? Let's unleash AI. The biggest thing that I caution and caveat people with, though, is not jumping into too fast with it without putting some sort of guardrails or idea or metric or end goal in place, because otherwise you will find a technology wagging the dog situation. You will have all these tools and no data to use or nothing to action against or not a clear outcome, and then you'll just be like going in circles with it, wondering, what are you paying for, why are you doing this? And that's why that MIT study everyone refers to, 95% of the initiatives fail. Yes, because every company decided, hey, the only way we're getting funding is if we throw AI in our name or AI in our product. I think I saw an AI enabled toothbrush the other day on the shelf, and I'm like, what, what is it going to tell me? I don't need AI in my toothbrush. Where I need AI is when I'm driving and I get hungry and it knows that I go to Chick
Yeah.
fil A. I want it to automatically figure out where the Chick fil A is and just be like, oh, it's about the time you eat lunch. Would you like me to add that as a stop?
Yes.
Those are the AI things I want in life. It's pretty simple. I don't need it to be this whole game changing. I want to practically solve everyday problems easier.
I think what you just described was the exact fear that I hear from executives almost every single day, which is we simply cannot allow AI to turn into yet another shadow IT system in our business.
Yep.
And they've experienced it
Yep.
before. They've seen it before where specific teams in the business get a budgetary authority to go and implement something out really any board level oversight, anything like that. And so they go and they experiment with things, they play with things, they subscribe to SaaS pieces of SaaS software that may or may not continue to get used. They forget to cancel the subscriptions. They all of a
Yep.
sudden now And even if they continue to use those individual pieces of software, it doesn't fall under the normal governance umbrella that they have applied to generalist IT tools in the business. And so therefore there's no networking protection. There's no single
Yep.
sign-on protection. There's a scenario here where even the companies that want to bring in good governance around AI, and when I was at B2B e-commerce world in Melbourne, there was a distribution company, where the CEO was on stage with the VP of or director of e-commerce, and they were basically interviewing each other from the same company.
Hmm.
And so the CEO was the one that gave the mandate for AI, and then the head of digital was effectively tasked with, okay, how do you practically figure out how to get AI into all the functions that you do as the digital lead in the business? And so one of the things that they talked about was the fact that even though we had the mandate from the CEO, even though we had the funding from the board, even though we had as much alignment as you can get in an organization, but we still started bumping into the practical realities of trying to do it, i.e., we're a Microsoft shop. So
Yep.
do we simply say, okay, everybody in the business must use Copilot? Or then
Right.
what we had engineers in the business, for example, that were saying Copilot doesn't help us with coding and troubleshooting systems in our IT system. So what we would do is on our own personal BYOD devices, we would use our
Yeah.
own ChatGPT account to find answers and then email the answers to ourselves on our email address, so that then we could copy and paste that out into our internal systems. And so you will always get a scenario where if you do not support best tools for the job, people will find out a way to get best tools for the job so that they can keep their job and so that they can continue to be more
Yeah.
efficient in what they do. They will find out a way to get that tool into the business. And that is the very definition of shadow IT.
Yep. And not only that, I love going to these conferences because you talk to other people in industry and in distribution, and you ask them, what ERP are you
Yeah.
using? And you'll hear every name under the sun, including 800 you've never heard of, because a bunch of these shops, again, 100-year-old
Yes.
businesses. How do you take a system like that and plug it into AI? You've got decades of business data, legacy information, and it's not just a simple connector. It's not just a simple, okay, now it can use ChatGPT and it has access to everything. You bring up a lot of good points. There's the divide, Microsoft versus Google Workshops, and companies that are Gemini, and how many businesses are spending money on ChatGPT licenses on their companies' employees' credit cards that have no
Yes.
advocate that I think finance needs to be involved in these
Totally.
discussions. There needs to be, just like every other system, there needs to be like a roll up at the month that says, here's what we're spending on AI. Here's our perceived ROI of it. What did it get done this month? Okay, I was able to create 15 proposals faster, customer service reduced by 30%. And you could give those buckets, and those have value. It's not always tangible cash dollars, but most times you can and say, this is what we were able to do. And so I think that's important as well. And use AI to do that. Ask it, hey, I want to implement this. Here's the constraints of my business. What do you recommend? Where do we start? And let it start to give you those things. People underestimate how much you can get from just really good prompting. Just asking it to come up with better questions, make sure I'm not missing something, do a little deep research now. The Gemini and all of these tools using internet research, like when it goes out and it starts finding sites, I don't know if you've clicked AI mode by accident in Google
Yes.
yet, and it's like querying websites, and the number just keeps going and going, and I'm like, is it the Powerball? Like it's up to 100 already. What is going on? It is so fast and so effective at harnessing all of that data that's out there.
Yeah, and how you've been at Ideal Tridon. You've been there for almost 6 years now, and
Yep.
man, I bet that time feels like it's just flown by. Were they always, when you first started with the company, were they as, I'm trying to phrase this in such a way that doesn't sound condescending. Were they always as embracing of change as now that you've been there for a few years? Were they always that best foot forward? Hey, technology is always going to be a major part of our business. We're going to always be on, maybe not the bleeding edge, but certainly the cutting edge. We're going to be early adopters. We're not going to be laggards. Or was one of the reasons that they brought you in was to help them become more embracing of that level of change?
Well, I would love to go with the second. I would love to say that I'm here to bring change and help people embrace that. I would say that we weren't ever really bleeding edge. I don't think that would us, but I think we were pretty close to, we were definitely before the mainstream, and we were definitely implementing, testing, and adopting things
Yes.
early. I like to think that I've helped make that faster and help show leadership the value of it. And I feel like we've gotten good buy-in. We've recently converted one of our websites, now has a new distributor portal, and we immediately shifted a large amount of volume from email and phone call orders to self-service. And I call that a big win. I know it's channel shift. I understand that it's not always net new, but that's a huge help if now customer service is freed up from typing in orders and handling that to actually being able to be proactive and responsive and get things done. So I think that change management is a large component of not only AI and where that's going, but with B2B e-commerce in general. 5, 10 years ago, if you started talking about B2B e-commerce to people, that was like the last thing on the board deck, or very not even on there. They'd never even made it because there wasn't even really platforms back then. It was the idea was you had a website, it's basically your catalog. Great, somebody can call us and order
Yeah.
products.
Yeah. But
And now we've gone full circle with, do we even have a phone number on there? Do we, how accessible do we want to be, or does it go to an
yes.
agent? Is it a
Yes.
bot? Is it a live thing that can do that? I've even heard of, and I'm not sure how well this is working, but supposedly well, they're starting to test this in the 911 sector.
Yes.
So part of my background is I've been a firefighter since I was 18. Still volunteering today, and there's the non-emergency number, which you call for. There's a dog running down the street, my
Cat in the
neighbor's
tree.
car's alarm's going off, all those things, cat in the tree. And supposedly certain areas are starting to test this where a human doesn't necessarily answer, but this AI trained bot does. And if it hears certain keywords like heart attack or emergency or
Gun to my
something,
head.
it will
Never.
live person and be right. It'll immediately transfer to a live person because it has to. But from the early studies, it's doing really well at handling okay, we'll send a cop to deal with the neighbor's dog who's barking. It's taking that off of people who are already stressed and
Yes.
taxed. And that is the biggest thing that I don't think people see in the B2B space. Unlike retail, a lot of times you have unlimited resources in retail because you have to scale, it has to just
Yeah.
deliver. And in B2B, it's always do more with
Mm-hmm.
less. And so you've got customer service teams, you've got quoting teams, you've got web teams, you've got IT teams that are all intensely taxed with 500 objectives. Like you said, combating shadow
Yeah.
IT. That's it. That could be it now with cybersecurity the way it
Yes.
is. But the people don't have the time. And so any little piece that you can take off their plate and automate, give them back 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 weeks of their life in progression is going to change the game for that corporation and that future of it.
And I think there's a secondary piece to this, which is that I'm seeing a scenario from the buy side where they're putting a gun literally to their, I don't know, let's say they're a dealer or it's a distributor dealing with a
Mm-hmm.
manufacturer. The buyers are putting a gun to the supplier's head and they're saying, hey, if you can't automate this for us in some sort of meaningful way, either you're going to give us a better price on the goods to cover our
Mm-hmm.
additional procurement costs of doing business with you,
Yep.
or we're going to find someone who can. We're going to find someone who can
Yep.
automate this for us. They're saying, hey, look, we got automation on our side. You don't have automation on your side. And I'm concerned that's where exactly this agentic commerce thing is going to get to. And I actually think that for the first time, probably ever in e-commerce, digital commerce, B2B is going to be ahead of retail e-commerce. And here's why. In the retail e-commerce space, people oftentimes buy based on inspiration and aspiration, meaning that for example, my wife can go to a website and she can just shop. She just browses around. She looks at what's recommended. She goes, oh, cool. That belt's going to go, that they've recommended to go with this blouse. Awesome. Looks good together. Cool. Let's add it to the cart. And so there is this element of just shopping for the sake of shopping, right? Just for the joy of
Yep.
shopping. And so I think this whole agentic commerce thing it probably has less application in that kind of a environment where I don't want to just tell ChatGPT, go and find me a blouse. I want to do that. I want to go and I want to, my wife doesn't want to tell ChatGPT, go and find me a red blouse for this event and then execute the transaction right there in ChatGPT. She wants to go and she wants to experience the full immersive, either in-person, in-store experience or
Yep.
the full immersive online experience. In B2B, because it's all about jobs to be done and it's all about how fast and how efficiently can we get those jobs done, that's where agentic starts to make a hell of a lot of sense because these are not discretionary purchases where I have to go, do I
Right.
like the color of that thing? No. Does this thing fit my need? Can it do the job? And is this what my customers want? And as
Right.
Jason Hine is fond of saying, if your customers can't find it, they can't buy it. And so the
Yep.
whole thing is we now are getting into a world where agents on the buy side and agents on the sell side can communicate similar to how human beings would to identify those products that are needed for that particular job or task at hand. And so that's why I think it's actually more applicable in the B2B world than it is in the B2C world. What are your thoughts?
I 100% agree. And I think that's a really great way of summarizing it. Everyone's talking about how simple it's going to be to buy a pair of red nuts because agentic, you're just going to be able to type in what you want and it's going to
Yeah,
go buy it. But that's not how the B2C and retail experience
yeah,
should work. You want to go, that's why Target's successful. People go and they spend an hour and a half walking the aisles and finding
yes,
something. You are 100% right, though. In B2B, we're making a
yeah,
widget. Does widget A have the right amount of threads? Does it fit the hole I need? Does it have the material specs I need? Great, I want to buy widget A. Who's the
yes.
cheapest? Who's the best in customer service? Who's has the best delivery? Who's going to do X for me? Those
Who's
are the
going to give me the
questions
best
that
credit terms? Who's going to
differentiate.
all those things?
Right, right. And agentic is going to shine massively in that area because if we have enriched websites with great data coming from strong PIMs, coming from strong marketing teams, all organized well, both for humans and robots, that company is going to win
Yes.
and they're going to start showing up at the top. I think that's a really interesting way to reframe what this whole agentic experience is going to be, and that it's not retail and that we are going to be the titans of industry once this happens. It's funny, it reminds me of an episode of The Office where they launched their B2B website and Kelly's, but when you drag the piece of paper into the cart, it goes, "Thank you for shopping at Dunder Mifflin." And she's so excited about the experience. It's, boy, B2B is fun
Yes.
again. This is going to bring enjoyment to B2B buying. It's because what it's going to do is it's going to take stress out. If I, as a buyer, can go into an agent system and type in the thing I need and the requirements and how many and when and whatever, and then walk away and come back 10 minutes later with a fresh cup of coffee and it has 5 results and here's each one and here's why each one is ranked and the inventory levels and my custom pricing, and I can click add to cart and check out, that's a huge win for those people. And they're digital natives, like you said. The new buyers are Gen Z, and eventually they'll be Gen Alpha, and they're going to be even more digitally native. It's wild when I talk about digital and I think about, man, I grew up on that cusp. I'm like, I was with dial up. I
Me too.
remember having a landline. I remember phones in the home. And I remember having to go somewhere to use a computer at first. Like those, that's so foreign to the new society and world we live in. And I don't know that people remember and look back fondly enough to be like, okay, agentic has gone from here to here in 6 months or a year. And like how transformative that is from I used to have to go to the library to use a computer. I used to have to dial up after 8 p.m. to save money to I have instant access to anything I could possibly want on the globe
Yes.
same day. Like we've made such amazing
Yes.
strides and are just going to continue to. It's really cool.
And I almost think of agentic as EDI 2.0. And I think what's interesting about that is that even for our cohorts of customers in the B2B world that will still maybe want to buy via EDI, traditional EDI, maybe they're going to want to buy via e-procurement and punch out integration. There's still a lot of what I call, I've coined the term digital services layer, DSL, that will sit in a portalized experience that can be backed by agentic capabilities that those buyers are still going to come to our portal to do things like check on inventory. They're going to come to our website to check on MOQs. They're going to come to our website to check on buying increments. They're going to come to our website, and they're going to, so that we can compare two products with similar specs side by side and see product information and download spec sheets and see exploded drawings. And they're going to come to our website to lodge digital quote requests. And they're going to come to our website and our portal to lodge a digital return request. There's still so many functions that need to
Yep.
happen and interactions that need to happen between a buyer and a seller in the B2B world that I think now can be portal / agentically mediated, which is going to give the
Yep.
customer a whole shitload of an improved experience, but it's also going to take the pressure off of the human side of the supply side to manually and in a human way respond to all of those additional service requests that are being made.
And it's so interesting you bring up EDI 2.0 and that whole idea. I thought I was partially crazy a year ago when we built our portal and we started working towards AI PO automation.
Yes.
So the idea exists in the regular world where you can drag a PO by email and it'll go into your
Yep.
system, and like the traditional doing it into your ERP was always like the
I like
mandate. There's plenty of
old
companies that do
OCR
that.
days, basically.
And I started and looked at it and said, no, this should be in the
Yes.
portal. It can also, it's an and not or. It can also be in the traditional, hey, our reps have access, whatever, do it the old way. I saw a need for it in the portal because exactly what you said. They still need to check their
Yep.
price. They still need to see if it's in stock. They're going to make a decision at that moment to buy or not. Those are things they can't do in their ERP unless they're doing an extended punch out or something fancy. But having that feature also gives us more control over the marketing we see, the messaging we empower because they're logging
Yes.
in. We've got them captive and we can say, hey, drag your invoice, your PO here, enter it once in your system. We'll do the rest. Great. But also, here's this month's
Yeah.
specials. Here's a clearance item. Here's are you buying this somewhere else? All that stuff we can do digitally that you don't get the experience when you're just doing the traditional sales channels.
And I think that's also now starting to extend into what have historically only been comms channels, like the WhatsApp, the
Yeah.
Teams, the Slack, the email. Those have historically been forms of communication between a buyer and a seller. And like my account manager, I could send them, I could say, I could take a photo of something I scribbled on a pad and I could send that photo off to my account manager and say, hey, Bob, can you send this stuff off to me to this job site today? I need it today. Can you get it out to
Yep.
me today? And there are new middleware tools. And for that matter, there are a lot of B2B centric or B2B only e-commerce platforms that have this concept of kind of an AI sales agent. So it doesn't really matter
Yep.
what channel a PO comes in on, whether it's Slack or Teams or whatever, they've all got APIs. And so we can now connect that. We can strip the PO off that, whether that's a handscripted message or whether it's a PDF.
Yep.
We can strip that off. We can map that directly into the commerce system as if the customer logged into the portal and did that action themselves. And so I think it's yet
Exactly.
another scenario where I've never been a massive fan of headless commerce before, but I now all of a sudden think that headless commerce has more applicability in the B2B world than the B2C and D2C world. And I couldn't have said that a couple of years ago because multimodal
Yeah.
AI can take whatever type of attachment is attached. It could be a CSV, it could be a PDF, it could be a photograph, it can be anything you want. And with multimodal AI, we can meaningfully interpret that request and we can then do something with it meaningful and automate that
Right.
entire process end to end. And that to me means that all these former communication only channels that required a human on both sides, now all of a sudden we don't have to necessarily have a human on both sides, but we can bring a human into the loop only when it makes sense to do so. For example, if someone sends a
Yep.
PO across and it's only 50% complete and it doesn't have all the information we need on it, then the sales rep can get involved. We can map the 50% of the data we do have into the commerce system, get it ready to go, and then flag it to the account manager and say, hey, look, we need these other 5 pieces of information. Then we can process the order. Then they can get in touch with their customers. And so I feel like I think it's a combination of multimodality and systems being built with AI at their core as opposed to just a bolt on afterthought. I think when we take
Yep.
both of those in combination together, it makes a pretty powerful 1-2 punch.
It does. And that's where B2B has always struggled, I
Yes.
think. For so long, we just had legacy. Everything has always been referred to as legacy in
Yes.
B2B because that's what it became. Once you put the wheels on it and you started driving the car, you never did anything to it because it
Yep.
worked and it didn't cost you any money to keep
Yes.
going. And so there was very rarely new features or new things in B2B that were so captivating, like agentic, that made you stop and say, we need to invest or rebuild or replatform or re-ERP. How many companies do you know nowadays that really do that? They're finding ways to bolt things on that make dislike systems talk with middleware and use AI somewhere in it. It is funny though how every company you talk to now has something with AI. They're just throwing AI somewhere in their
Yes.
package to make sure that you're aware that's what's happening.
And I think that gets back to the
But
builder
it's
buy
it's
question,
cool.
right? I think that
Yep.
and that's what at all these events I go to, that's half the discussion at the roundtables that I've been facilitating.
Yeah.
People are going, "Do we roll our own? Do we roll something custom on the top of ChatGPT? Do we simply rely on all of our existing vendors to bring AI into their platforms?" And so we just have to, AI comes along for the ride because we're already a customer of those platforms. They are really struggling with those decisions on a day-to-day basis about what do we outsource to vendors and what do we try to either build or integrate in-house. And that's been the age-old question forever about technology, but man, it feels like that's the tip of the spear of the question right now.
Yeah, because you don't want to be the company that goes to your board and says, "I'm going to spend 100 million and build this in house," and then 6 months after you launch, a Shopify type thing comes out that's everything you built turnkey and better, and you're like, "Oh, I made the wrong call there." Yeah, and so that is a huge challenge now is figuring out which things do we automate and plug in and which things do we leave alone and which things do we wait for the tech to catch up. so interesting going to these shows year after year, or even just a few months apart, and new products, new services, new offerings that are hitting the market, that are hitting the startups and the incubators that like didn't even exist 6 months ago. And just the problems they're starting to solve. It's really cool. And I think it's going to cause a paradigm shift from the top all the way down, from the C level through financials through to the salespeople. It just needs people to buy in and understand that they're not going to get replaced. Everyone was so fearful of AI. And while there's certainly jobs changing, like in the creative and marketing space, until we can implant Neuralinks in all of our legacy salespeople that have been here for 50 years, that have every piece of knowledge of the business, it's not going to do away with
Yes.
humans, because you can't lose all that knowledge overnight. And there's still a value in having people in the loop. And if you don't have a good balance between human in the loop and using these systems, you're going to have problems, and it's going to get really bad really quick. You need to make sure you're looking at it with people that understand what's supposed to be happening.
And I don't, frankly, I don't know a single sales rep in the world that I've ever talked to ever that likes the admin jobs that they do, that's just part and parcel of their job. They don't like coming back from a job site where they've met with a customer and keying an order into an ERP. They don't like all the admin function that 20 to 60% of a sales rep's job is pure admin tasks that they would love to offload to the robots so that they can knock on more doors, so that they can go to more boozy lunches on a Friday,
Yep.
so that they can go and land more customers, so that they can land and expand with existing customers, so that they can have these conversations that take time. Like, it's this investment of time into the relationship with the customer that bears the most fruit. And if they can offload, and
Yep.
it's the same with customer service teams, like you said right at the beginning,
Yep.
if we can offload the stuff that they hate doing, because there's no customer service person that likes living in an ERP. Nobody. No. Okay, maybe your CFO likes living in the ERP, but no one else does. And so the reality is, if we can give people tools fit for purpose that actually make them
Yeah.
enjoy their jobs more and get more fulfillment out of their jobs, they're much more likely to embrace that technology, right?
Yeah. And I'm curious to see where a Salesforce or HubSpot or some of these companies go with that, because no one likes to use their
Yes,
CRM. That's the salesperson hates putting in call notes, hates doing all that. I don't think we're too far off from wearable AI tech,
100%.
or just even apps on our phones that you throw it down on the table, you have your casual meeting with the person, and then it extrapolates the differences between talking about your kids and your wife and talking about products and services of the business, and it puts the right notes in the
Correct.
system. And that's where we're going to start seeing like true transformation, is when we reach those critical points and people are able to do more of what they love because of AI and because of technology. So all in on that. I think that's where we got to go with this.
And what's interesting is, I've heard people say, no, that'll never be a thing in these private personal meetings where you put something down on the table. And I'm like, do you remember pre-COVID how nobody liked to use the Fathoms or the Otters or the
Right.
AI note takers? How pre that you were a pariah if you brought an AI note taker along to a
Right.
call, and you might be the only person out of 20 people on a call that had an AI note taker. And then all of a sudden, by 3 months into COVID, everybody was using AI note takers because they're like, oh my God, I'm literally living on the phone 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I cannot handwrite notes for every single call that I take. It's impossible. I can't keep up, because by the
Yep.
time I get to the end of my last call of the day, even if I have to try to think back to the first call of the day and write down some quick action points, I will have forgotten everything that we talked about. And it's hard to take notes literally while you're trying to focus on somebody else. And do you also remember pre-COVID how you were a pariah if you sent your Calendly link to someone and said, "Hey, pop
Oh,
something"? You were a pariah. Now everybody expects it, and the first person to send it,
yep.
it's sure I'll jump into yours, and my calendar will connect to your calendar. It will find a time that's available for both of us, and it's great for all, right? And so I think
Yeah.
these things where we historically have said no, that disrupts the personalized experience that we give each other and the respect that we give each other. Those can become mainstream really fast, faster than we think they will. So I think if we can get a wearable pendant AI or something like that that can record all of our meetings, it'll have something read on it so it's obvious to everybody that's being recorded. That will eventually be just as common as having an AI note taker on your daily calls with your clients. I think it will become a nothing burger in the grand scheme of things, because if it helps, let's say that I'm the buyer and my account rep comes to see me, I don't want them to forget one really quick. Let's say we have an hour long meeting. I don't want them to forget one thing that they didn't write in their notebook, and so it doesn't happen. Whereas if they can go
Yeah.
back and that thing can in real time be putting in action items because it's net connected, it would be 5G enabled. It can in real time put action items in their CRM so that by the time they get back to
Yeah.
their office, nothing's been missed.
That would be a true merging of technology and people in a way that would be beneficial, I think, to everyone. What it's going to open up, though, is a huge can of worms and
Yes.
legal compliance. How much is going on in the world around that already? With don't bring it to Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Forget the
You have to have
GDPR.
GDPR and cookie consent. Yeah, you have to be
I'll have to
everyone you
ask
walk
somebody to put
into,
their fingerprint on my
except the
pendant, which
cookies. Yeah,
approves it.
yeah, yeah. So I think that you're onto something though. That is the way this is going to go. I'm amazed that we haven't reached a point where instead of having to send Calendarly links, Outlook can just automatically like you're in a meeting and it's do you want me to agentically
Yes.
schedule a meeting with this person?
Yes.
Yes. And it comes back with 3 times automatically between your calendars securely. There's a feature Microsoft should be working
Totally.
on is something that lets me connect with others and not have to even double check calendars. And I think we're going to see more of that. It's going to become very proliferated like AI note takers did in the beginning.
Yes.
It's amazing to think back to COVID, man. It's so wild that it feels like decade, and some days it feels like it was last
Yes.
week. It different parts of it and different stages. You're like, was that really that many years ago? You're like, I feel like we just did that. And then other times you're like, oh yeah, that definitely feels like it was a while
Yeah,
ago.
and funny thing is, some of those cultural changes that were prompted by COVID, they've become deeply embedded in the daily ways that we work. And some of it
Yep.
was for the better, some of it was admittedly for the worse, but there's no going back now. And so it's when sales reps suddenly realized, especially for manufacturers and distributors back then who had no digital capabilities at all, and there were many, there was like
Yeah.
70% of manufacturers and distributors in the US had no digital capabilities at all at that point. They were literally, I remember because I was working in an agency at that time and running an agency, and I remember literally every single both retailer and manufacturer and distributor that we were in the middle of projects on at the beginning of COVID put them all on hold. They said, we don't know how this is going to go, we don't know how much money we're going to need, we don't know anything at this stage, so put every project on hold. But then literally less than a month later, they all came back and not only put their projects back on press the go button, but they said, can you deliver this sooner? Because now everything's coming through our digital channels and we are not ready. It's like trying to drink out of a fire hose. And so it's so interesting how a moment of fear and panic can, in fear of the unknown, going, okay, we know we have a pretty clear direction of where this is going, but we just cannot adapt fast enough. And so do you
Right.
feel that that fear that was put into manufacturers and distributors at the beginning of COVID, that is helping to minimize the chance that they get left behind by AI too, because they're going, okay, cool. We weren't ready for COVID to hit and have to do 85% of our business digitally. And we were playing catch up for 2 years just to get into a place that was stable. We cannot allow the same thing to happen with AI.
For me, the difference is e-commerce and digital existed.
Yeah.
It was B2C, it was
Yeah.
retail, but there was a proven roadmap and groundwork laid that said people will do this and it was already blowing it out of the water.
Yes.
So getting a company to transform digitally that way was a lot easier because you're like, okay, it works elsewhere, we can adapt it. I think the fear with AI and getting it to move faster is that businesses are either they don't have the right people in the right seats, they're not educated enough on what the tools can do, they just don't know where to
Yes.
start. And so then you have all these failed projects. And then when you have a stat like 95% fail, the financial suites just lock down and go, no one else is succeeding in this either. We're not part of the
Yes.
5%. So we're just going to keep going the way we're going. I think in a way it's going to stymie or slow progress until more conferences, more people, more big names start doing something big in the space that is transformative that everyone can see and say, oh, maybe we missed this. Just like the idea we were talking about of the having things automatically sync in the background or having action items ready in my CRM. When they start seeing those and they're working and they're not just creating a bunch of fake activities or
Yes.
problems, that's when we're going to see it pick back up. But I think there's going to be a lull right now where you don't know between international tensions and tariffs, cost of everything going up, the uncertainty of investment and money and borrowing and all of that. It's hard to then say, let's put money into AI.
Yes.
But I think without a doubt, it's going to come around and we'll have our day. I think that it's not that far off. it's just going to take a couple really big wins. You're going to need to see like a Walmart scale or an Amazon scale, like transformation where they say, hey, Amazon just did it. What did they lay off
20,000
40,000
people. Yeah.
people because of AI? Which again is short sighted because you still need
Yes.
people in a lot of
Yes.
ways. And it's hard from the outside. We don't know how redundant that was, how many people were just making reports or checking boxes or doing basic things that AI is really good at. But I think as these companies do that, you have to balance it between just firing everyone and going full AI and understanding that there are still limitations in the systems and make sure that you know what you're asking it to do.
Oh,
Because either end of that spectrum, there's a very, that road for AI is not paved very well
yes.
yet. There's a very single lane in between. There's really big cliffs on either side.
And I think that there was some questions that I got in Atlanta where this woman in the crowd, she's at a distributor, and so there was a final Q&A panel with four of us at the end of the final day, and it was just open slather Q&A for everything, and so it was really interesting to get the sense of the pain points from the audience. And this one woman said, she said, look, we've got so many things we want to do and so many priorities that are given from different departments in the business, and we're the service provider to the whole company from a digital perspective. And so we're trying to keep finance happy, and we're trying to keep ops happy, and we're trying to keep sales happy, and we're trying to keep everybody happy. And so she said, how are you guys successfully prioritizing your digital projects? And so the two women who were on stage with me, who are at, one was at a manufacturing company, one was at a distribution company, they both gave their frameworks. They both described in brief detail.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a formal internal framework about how to prioritize projects. And one woman works for a German company, and so she said, we have a 25-page guidance document internally about how we score and prioritize our internal projects. The other woman said, look,
Wow.
ours isn't quite that detailed, but we have a very clear operational procedure for prioritizing, scoping, and budgeting our digital projects and getting them approved or disproved, right? And so she said, okay, that's great. And I said, that's awesome, and you do need some sort of framework to manage your internal digital projects. I said, but you're going to probably find yourself in a situation, no matter what type of framework you use, where there will be two projects will get like the same score or a very similar score, and they feel like they touch similar areas of the business. And so you will have a scenario where you will need to break ties. And I said, if you do
Mm-hmm.
not have a meaningful way of operationalizing customer feedback on a regular basis, you will not be able to break ties, because the only way I know how to break ties consistently inside these manufacturing distribution businesses is to take the feedback from the customer and the themes of feedback from the customer, present those to the board and say, look, we've got these 15 projects that are in priority, but our customer feedback says we should give more weight to these three versus these other three, that from our internal view, these look like the same priority across these 6 projects.
Mm-hmm.
How do we break ties? I think it must come down to customer feedback, because at the end of the day, if you aren't building something that's fit for purpose for the customer, you probably won't get adoption anyway. So you probably won't see the efficiency gains that you think you will if you're going and building something that you just seat of the pants think is important to the business. And if it's not important
Yeah.
to the customer, it shouldn't really be that important to you either.
That's a really hard line to drive too, because too often we get invested in our own ideas or
Yes.
projects, or we go to these conferences and we're like, oh, that sounds like an awesome idea. I want to go do that. And then you poll your customers, and if the feedback doesn't line up, okay, maybe we didn't poll our customers
Yes.
and we go anyway. But I think you're spot on that it has to come from the customer first, because we are all moving too fast and we all have too many responsibilities to do things that aren't going to have an impact to them. If I'm not making my buyer's life easier, then they're not getting another check mark on why they should buy, because someone in our space
Yes.
is. I guarantee you, if there's 100 companies, one of them is doing something that's going to make their lives easier. And if it's not us, it should be. And we need to make it us. And that's a very big differentiator. I think that's where having a consultant or a panel or a board or bringing people in to talk about this stuff is so
Yes.
important. Obviously, you're in the consultative space, and being able to talk to so many businesses, you get that feeling and that reaction from them of, did you ask your customers? No. Okay,
Do you think we
go ask
should?
them. And then they find out it's, yeah, it's not the right path. It's a really big thing to miss if you do miss it. And I think companies need to pause and make sure they're doing that and that they're checking where these priorities are. We've got a very simple thing right now. It's similar to our vendor selection process. You just do your diligence, make sure that the project has some merit, figure out what costs are and what ROIs would be, and you figure out, do you have the right people to lead it, and do you have internal leadership bought into it. But so far ours have been very small and primarily priority around productivity and internal gains, and then rolling it out to customers a little slower, because we don't want to be the Delta. We don't want to be the company that tells you to go put something in a microwave that shouldn't go in a microwave. We don't want the notoriety or the press for doing something first.
Yes, that injured someone, for example, and we got sued over it.
Yes, exactly. And our products have a high probability of being used in life
Yeah.
applications, things that we make stuff that holds things, clamps things, supports things. It's not an area you want to guess.
Yes, yes, no question about it. In fact, one of the final things I told this woman, I said, here's a trick for new players. Even if you've operationalized getting feedback from your customers, make sure you're using a third party for that. And I said, I don't care
Yeah.
whether you hire me or someone else up here on this panel, just have a third party do it. And I said, here's why. In my experience, the companies that have tried to operationalize this only internally, they do not get the brutally honest level of feedback they need to make the right decisions, because usually they say, oh, our account managers talk to their customers, and anything their customer wants, they bring it back to the
Yeah.
business. The problem is those two people have to work together every single day. So that buyer is not going to be brutally honest to that seller,
Nope.
because they have to literally go back cap in hand to that person the very
Yep.
next day and make more purchases. And so they will typically
Yeah.
sugarcoat it, candy coat it, whatever, pick your analogy. They will not be as brutally honest as you need them to be able to actually generate the right experience that they want from you. But if someone third party can come in, have a private meeting with them and say, look, I am here specifically to find out the 1, 2, 3 things you love about doing business with us, and the 1, 2, 3 things about doing business with us that either you hate or is really painful. That's my job. They've
Yeah.
hired me to do that. So feel free to lay it on me. I'm that independent third party that basically I'm going to anonymize all this information. We're going to put it into themes and
Yep.
buckets, and then we're going to present it back to the business. So you don't have to worry about your relationship with the seller. You're going to still have a great relationship with them. So lay it on me. And when you open up that door, I tell you, those customers will be brutally honest if you give them the opportunity. And they will tell you, and sometimes it is not the big AI initiatives that you think are going to be
Hmm.
the things that are prior to them. I was running a customer interview recently with their customers, and they said, I have been doing business with the supplier for 15 years. And in that 15 years, I have never, on any of the shipments I have ever received from them, known when I was going to get it. And they said, that's a problem,
Jeez.
because I buy
Yeah.
20 and 40-foot containers of product from the supplier. And what happens when I don't know, but then it turns up in my loading dock? Okay. I get a
Yeah.
container that turns up in my loading dock, and it takes up a bay for 3 days because I don't have a receiving team. I don't have a devanning team. I don't have a put away team assigned, because I've got 4 other loading docks where this
Didn't know
stuff,
it
and
was
I didn't
coming.
know it was going to
Yeah.
arrive. I said, and they said, it would be really nice if we had a portal that we could log into and we could track a shipment from the time it leaves the port till the time it's with at least, I don't need like an exact hour, but if at least I knew the day or the
Right.
week it was going to arrive, I could at least plan around it. And that sounds like, would you ever have a retail e-commerce website that didn't send out tracking information to your customer? Would that ever happen?
No.
No. So why do
No.
we accept that as normal
Yep.
in something so simple as that in the B2B world? And so sometimes the big flashy AI initiatives won't see uptake, but the simple things like get the information about damn shipments into your customers' hands, sometimes that will make their day better than anything else you could possibly do.
Yeah, I forget who I was talking to. It might have been Andy Hoare from Master B2B was talking on a podcast or an episode of something, and he said fixing the potholes isn't
Yeah.
sexy, but somebody's got to fix the potholes in the road because we got to keep driving on them, and that's B2B.
Yes.
To them, that's a
Yeah.
pothole that should just get filled in, and the data's there. The company knows when they ship it, all of that. It's just not getting to the buyer, and so fixing that pothole is going to make a massive improvement in not only that customer's life but a lot of
Yes.
lives, and versus something big and flashy. And I think something else you touched on about having it done externally, having it done in an anonymous form. I used to have a colleague that would work with us, and he would tell me every time a customer would call and complain, this didn't work, or I had an error here, he would say, just imagine all the people that aren't calling. And it rang true to me. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Out of all, if 100 people have the problem and only one calls, we didn't fix it for 99 people
Yes.
then. So that's a problem. And they're not just going to go out of their way and call you because they want to. They're going to find a supplier that their website works or doesn't have that friction or just makes it happen. I'm amazed that company did business for 15 years in that format, though. That's at some point I would have called my account rep and been like, listen, I need to know when this container's
Well,
coming.
and they said the only time we've known is literally when we pick up the phone. They don't do anything proactive. It's only when I ring
Wow.
my account manager and I say, "Do you have any idea when oh, it's going to arrive between this day and this day?" But they've never done anything proactive around that ever. It's always been we have had to call and contact them, and that's the only way we get this information.
Can you imagine though what a win as a consultant that was? Because you went back with this anonymized survey and you probably gave them another $1 million in business just by adding tracking that they should have anyway. But you look like the hero. You're like, look at what I came up with.
Exactly.
We're
Look at how
geniuses.
awesome. Look at this nugget that I pulled out of your customer. When all these customers have had this problem for, in some cases,
Yeah.
decades. It's wild, isn't it? And what
Wow.
is,
B2B's, yeah.
and
B2B puts
we
up
see
with it.
this low hanging fruit literally everywhere. It's so common. What for you, how do you, as we come down to the end of our time together, when you look out over
Yeah.
2026 and beyond, how do you allocate time to potholes versus these amazing, flashy, the latest shiny thing initiative? How do you find that balance?
Yeah. For me, I would say to break it down really simple, it's like a 2 to 1. I need to fix 2 potholes for every big flashy thing I do
Okay.
because I'm going to get the wins from fixing the potholes and keeping the train moving and keeping the business happy. And then I get some runway to play with something fun.
Yes.
So if I continue to deliver every quarter on those just nagging problems that people bring up or that we find, I've gone out and visited with customers with the sales team and we've gotten some good feedback. Probably not as much as we would get if we did an external survey, but still, I sat with one customer and I said to her, show me your workflow with us. And she was showing me, and she's going screen by screen, and she's going to all these places. And she has 5 tabs open, and she's got our catalog PDF open. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is every day. And she's, oh yeah, this is just to find this or this. And I'm like, okay, I got to come up with that. That's a huge pothole. I need to fix and find a solution for you.
Wow.
And we were able to. We were able to come up with easy wins that said, did you know that this cross reference existed, or did you know that if you searched over here, you'd find it? And that's really big for the business. But then it gives me some. It not only gives me credit and that success and win, but it also gives me some of that energy to go do those bigger AI initiatives where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to take that big swing for the fences. I'm going to risk it, and I'm going to see what comes back. So for me, I try to do like a balance of 2 to 1. Like I try to fix two things, one ethereal, big, exciting project, and my team's time as well. I try to make sure that we have a pulse on the commercial side of the business, that we're working with the functional leaders, that we're hearing from the sales teams. I try to keep an open door so that somebody can call me and say, hey, your website sucks. This doesn't work. Because to them, I use it every day.
Yes.
So I may not be bothered by the same things that they're going to get bothered by. And so when they call and say, this is the worst thing I've ever used, I take it with a grain of salt and I'm like, okay, well, it's not, but we'll figure this out and we'll get through it.
It's so funny you should say that, and the reason I say that specifically is I just went live. One of my SI clients, I was leading a big project for them via them and their client, and their client just went live with a massive new end-to-end B2B solution that they've never had before in the business. And the sales reps said, "Look, we want to bring in there's a whole bunch of custom functionality you built for us on the front end for the customer. We want to bring those functionalities into the admin for our sales team to also have access
Mm.
to." Now
Mhm.
I said, yes,
Yep.
I said, we can 100% do that. And I said, if I just was trying to generate more work for us, then I would say yes. But I said, there's a big downside to doing that. I said, and you know what it is? No, Jason, tell me. When you can masquerade, so they can already masquerade as a customer, log into the front end as
Yeah.
a customer, and place the order through the front end as a customer, and they get access to all that amazing whiz bang wow custom functionality. I said,
Yep.
if you masquerade as a customer, and you are going through the exact same buying experience that your customer is going through, what do you think that's going to do? It's going to build
Show you all the
it's going to show
problems.
you all
Yeah.
the problems, all the friction. It's going to give you empathy for your customer's buying experience, etc. So I said, how about we wait 6 months? How about you just masquerade as your customer? You log in through the front end as them. You place the orders on their behalf. You get access to all this cool functionality. And then at the end of the 6 months, if you still want us to build it into the back end for you, we can go ahead and do that. But I said, this is a brand new launch. I said, there's going to be bugs. There's going to be issues. There's going to be problems. And I said, I would rather you find it than your customer find it. So I said, how about we at
Yeah.
least give 6 months for all this whiz bang wow new functionality to bed in and get stable, and we let you act on behalf of the customer, almost in a soft launch type of scenario. And they were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's not only going to save you money, but it's going to know which things you should really be focusing on as the things you think you should be focusing on. Super interesting feedback. We're 100% aligned on that. Any big, exciting, hairy, scary initiatives you've got planned already for 2026 that you're going, man, I cannot wait to get into 2026 because we're going to be doing X?
Oh no, we're already doing them.
Okay.
There's no waiting. I had a conversation with a business leader and he said, by the end of next year, I need a list of this. And I'm like, do you mean by the end of this year? I was like, if you're waiting a year for strategic initiatives
That's bad.
and to come up with we're going too slow. So yeah, no, we're doing some really fun stuff around cross-referencing, around being able to speak in a more natural language about our products. Having really technical products is a blessing and a
Yes.
curse. But when all of the products have the same description, but very minor nuance in either material or a very different size or something like that, but they're all essentially the same widget, it gets hard. And so rather than requiring customers to need to know all the specifics, we're trying to come up with a more natural language chatbot where they can speak to it. It'll look at our product data, it'll look at our ERP, our catalogs, different things we have, and figure out the part numbers and get it back to the people quickly. And also being able to decode and reverse engineer competitive
Oh,
numbers.
yeah.
So being able to figure out if they only know it from their competitor, and rather than tie up a salesperson with searching and going online and figuring, if we can get an agent to do that in a responsible manner, that's something pretty exciting. So
Wow.
looking forward to it.
Wow. Very
Yeah.
cool. I love that. And if you could if you could snap your fingers and change one thing about the B2B e-commerce industry more generally, and if you had your wish list, what would be at the top of your wish list?
Stop making B2B have so much friction. It's a D2C sale masquerading.
Yes.
Like we add arbitrary friction in ways we don't even realize. Again, just simple things like credit limits and net terms and being able to order with a specific release date online. Like B2B is complex, yes. And there are certainly important things in that nuance, but we need to stop having the friction. It needs to be as seamless as a D2C transaction. It should just come second nature. It shouldn't be all this. Your account has to be authorized to do this or that, and only certain reps on a Thursday can access this thing. No, we need to make it more universal and less gatekeeping. We need to be more transparent with those buyers and just in general, I think in B2B. I think we keep a lot of secrets, and even when we're not in the same industries, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from Scott. We were able to talk to others in a we didn't all sign NDAs, but we basically signed
Yes.
NDAs, and we were able to share information because that guy's not my competitor. He's a different industry, he's a different vertical. He makes completely different widgets, but I felt comfortable being able to share my pain, and they shared theirs. And as we can get better at that. I think retail's really good at that. They know secret shoppers are going into
Oh, yeah.
Walmart and Target, and they know that they're looking over each other's shoulders all day long. B2B is so tenuous about that. And I think we need to lose some of that veil. We need to just, we're all in the sandbox. It's going to benefit all of us. Let's all grow together and have a really awesome time doing it.
Man, I couldn't agree more. I like to say that at retail e-commerce events, these retail brands, they love getting up on stage and telling their story because they just look at it as another marketing channel. They look at it as another opportunity to talk about their brand, right? Unfortunately, in B2B, we play things oftentimes a little bit too close to our chest. And so we not only miss out on the opportunity to tell the world how great our companies are, but we also miss out on the
Yep.
opportunity to learn from each other as well. I agree with you. I think after Scottsdale, I'm quietly confident that things are getting better. And I saw a lot of even competitors in Scottsdale having discussions, not obviously giving away the farm in terms of they're not going to give exact numbers, but what they are doing is
Of
they can
course.
talk about percentages, they can talk about pain points, they can talk about things they're struggling with, they can talk about, oh, we're implementing this new PIM, but you've already implemented this PIM. What are some of the gotchas that I should look out for? Those are the kinds of conversations I saw people having in a very transparent, brutally honest way. And that was very refreshing to watch.
Yeah. 100%.
Listen, man,
Awesome.
as we come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you. I get to let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. Mr. Marc Vasquez, what is your question for me
Oh,
today?
interesting. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts and I didn't think to pregame one of these to come up with something
I'm glad you
offhand.
didn't. Be on the
Yeah,
spot.
no. If you had to pick one industry to spend your life in working in B2B, what would it be?
Oh my God, that's such a good question, and it's so hard. Oh my God, wow, wow. There's so many cool industries too. It would probably be industrial. This is probably a little bit broader than what you had hoped, but versus say building supplies or versus some of the other
Yeah.
industries I've serviced. I love industrial product distribution. I really love that. And as
Okay.
opposed to purely like industrial product manufacturing or something like, and I'll tell you why. It's because I think the role of an industrial product distributor has evolved radically over the last couple of years so that they are no longer just selling SKUs, they are selling solutions. And by that, I mean they've got field services, they've got installation services, they've got design and fit out services. I'm seeing industrial distribution move from a purely monopolistic model, meaning that historically in industrial distribution, they have been given monopoly rent seeking power basically from the manufacturers they distribute on
Yeah.
behalf of. And now with digital distribution and now with e-commerce, that's not the case. And so industrial distributors have had to adapt in ways that a lot of other verticals haven't quite had to adapt as fast over the last couple of years. And I'm seeing them get real creative about how they can add value for their customers. And it's pretty cool to watch. And
Yeah.
so I would say industrial product distribution. And I'm seeing such radical M&A activity in this space, meaning that the industrial distributors doing it well and the industrial distributors doing it poorly, that gap is growing exponentially fast. And so the ones doing it really well are acquiring the smaller, less agile, maybe even some of the older players because they have figured it out. They have figured out how to add value in ways that is like it's super. Even I go in sometimes and they will tell me some of the services that they provide, and I'm going, wow, that is super creative in a way that you can differentiate yourself in the market. And so I'm seeing some
Yeah.
stuff happening in industrial distribution right now that's pretty wild.
That's awesome. Great answer. Very cool.
Listen, brother, I really appreciate your time. I'm sure the audience will too. I'll drop your LinkedIn link into the show notes if anybody wants to reach out and have a quick conversation with you about what you
Absolutely.
guys do and wants to have a little bit of a friendly behind the scenes conversation about what's working and not working. So I really appreciate your time and I can't wait to speak to you again soon, my friend. And I'll see you at the next B2B e-commerce world.
Absolutely. I'll be there.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.